Good morning, Hobnob 2020, as we banter at the ballpark. Thank you all for joining us today. It is my pleasure to share the stage with two familiar faces, the Mississippi Commissioner of Agriculture and Commerce, Andy Gibson, and the Mississippi Commissioner of Insurance, Mike Cheney. Hobnob this year in order to kind of address some questions that Mississippians may have. So without further ado, shall we begin?
Let's do it.
Commissioner Gibson, I'll ask you the first question, which is a two-part question as a matter of fact. What are some of your key accomplishments, would you say, during your tenure, and specific goals moving forward for the future?
Well, thank you. And first, I do want to say thank you to MEC and you, Jason, for doing this. These are unparalleled times in our history, and it's good to have at least some sense of normalcy here today. And having Hobnob here at the ballpark, what a great treat. You know, COVID changed everything in everyone's life, and that applied to the Department of Agriculture and Commerce as well, and the farmers that we serve. So as I think about major accomplishments, I think that one of them that I would put at the top of the list is that we were able to keep here in Mississippi, keep agriculture and commerce flowing throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. And that applied, you know, it came right at the beginning of planting season for our farmers. We waived some regulations so farmers could go ahead and get the seed in the ground. We kept the seed lab running because you got to put the seed in the ground today for the harvest you want tomorrow. And our farmers never quit. We waived some regulations at the gas pumps so that trucks could continue to roll, keep the grocery stores stocked and supplied. And I think as there are many accomplishments I could talk about, but I think the tribute is to our farmers and to all those involved in keeping our food supply chain going throughout this COVID pandemic. And to them, I give them a great thanks. And as we look to the future, of course, we want to expand markets. That's one of my major goals. As agriculture and commerce, the commerce side of that is so important. We have many untapped markets and emerging markets for our products in Mississippi. Everything grown, raised, crafted, and made right here in Mississippi, we want to sell it to more places. And looking forward to that, as well as building a more resilient food supply chain here locally. Those are my goals.
Good deal, good deal. Next to you, Commissioner Cheney, I'll pose the same question. What are some of your key accomplishments, would you say, during your tenure as commissioner, and specific goals moving forward for the future?
Well, one of the things that we've done, I want to address COVID-19 or the coronavirus. We kind of hit the ground running back in the first week of March, simply because we had one of the first cases of coronavirus within an agency in the state, and we caught it early on the 6th of March, and we developed a protocol for the rest of the agency, and several agencies, we shared a lot of that same protocol. And we've only had that one case, and we thank God for that, for protection. But one of the things we had to do was try to address how do you handle COVID-19 and a pandemic with health insurance, and we were able to do that by issuing bulletins on telemedicine, which has proven to be a very effective tool for doctors to handle patients, especially older patients that do not need to get out and come into a doctor's office or be exposed. So that's been something that we have done very proactive. We've issued 14 bulletins to allow companies to do self-audits on the insurance premiums they have to pay. And we work very closely with other agencies. And specifically, I'd just like to commend Commissioner Gibson for his ability to work with us as an agency to try to address many of the problems that we have. Some of the problems that you have in business are trying to provide insurance during a COVID and a pandemic, COVID-19 atmosphere, and that's presented some challenges. We've had tornadoes back in April and May. You know, we had two within a 2-week period. We worked very closely with many of the other agencies to try to make certain that claims were paid, and of course we have teams down on the Gulf Coast. After Zeta, I talked with Commissioner Gibson earlier this morning about some of the effects on poultry growers, and I could talk about that all day, but it's hard for a poultry grower to get insurance in this climate due to tornadoes and the fact that some of the buildings are older and may not be mitigated to withstand hurricane force winds. So we've got programs in place called the BRIC program. That's a federal program that's building resilient infrastructure communities that we're working with Commissioner Gibson on and some of his departments. So we're doing a lot of things. I could talk forever about a lot of the other issues that we've had, but The main thing that we've done that I think that will help consumers in this state is to pass a bill to prevent balance billing by some of the unscrupulous providers that we have within the state. And basically that's kind of gone away. The legislature was very smart in what they did. They gave us the ability to regulate it because no one else was doing so, and we've been able to get a cap on that to protect the consumers of this state.
Great, good deal, good deal. You both mentioned how COVID-19 coronavirus has adversely impacted us across the nation as well as in Mississippi over these last 8 months or so. I'll ask this question to you this time, Commissioner Gibson. Specifically within the agriculture and farming communities, how can agriculture and the farming communities assist moving forward to help in this pandemic?
Well, that's a great question, and of course, the bottom line is if we don't eat, we don't survive. And so every day our farmers are producing the food and fiber and shelter that we need to survive, the very basic components of human existence. And I think what COVID has done is for all of America and really all the world shown a spotlight on how critical agriculture is, especially here in Mississippi. Agriculture is our #1 industry. It's our #1 employer. We talk about the poultry houses. I appreciate Commissioner Cheney, the great work that we're doing together to make our poultry houses more resilient and help with the insurance costs. But agriculture helps every day because it keeps food on the table. And in addition to that, as you know, the USDA this year rolled out the Farmers to Families Food Box program. When all the restaurants shut down across the country, it eliminated 60 to 70% of the market for our domestic agriculture products. And you saw the tragic videos of milk being poured out and crops being plowed under and vegetables being thrown away. And so the USDA, the Trump administration, had a great idea. Let's take that excess food and give it to people who may be without a job. And the Farmers to Families Food Box program was a great success to help families in need. And in fact, it's continuing, it looks like, through the end of this year. Our agency was glad to be a small part of that, helping to host those distributions on the state fairgrounds and in other areas. So agriculture is critical, and it always will be, and it's always part of the solution for our long-term, not only survival, but agriculture allows us to thrive here in Mississippi.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you saying it's a part of the solution, and I think so many times during this current climate, we complain a lot about different things going across the country, but we want to be a part of the solution. So I pose this question to you, Commissioner Cheney. You kind of alluded to it earlier about some of the challenges that you guys have experienced within the insurance industry as a result of COVID-19. Can Mississippians expect any type of regulatory changes as a result moving forward?
You'll see some regulatory changes with the pandemic and COVID-19, especially on the healthcare side and how we address healthcare. You know, we get involved at the Department of Insurance with healthcare throughout the state, and if we can deliver healthcare to the rural parts of our state by using telemedicine and telehealth, it's the right thing to do. And we work hand in hand with the University of Mississippi Medical Center to try to make certain that we have access to healthcare in the rural parts of the state. My job as a regulator is to make certain that insurance is available at a competitive rate for our consumers and citizens of this state. You got to remember that something that Commissioner Gibson said, he's not only Commissioner of Agriculture, he's Commissioner of Commerce. If you can't insure a product, you can't finance it. If you can't finance it, you do not have an economy. It's just about that simple. Insurance is a lock key that makes the economy of this state and this nation run. And without it, and without a competitive market, you will not have an economy. It's pretty simple. So we're not something you see on the news every day. We're the agency that's supposed to do our job and make certain that we fit in and work with every other agency that we affect.
Oh, great, great. A few moments ago, you mentioned about particular legislation from this past year. The Mississippi legislature recently concluded an extended legislative session earlier this month, and as a result, are there any potential legislative priorities that your office will focus on in 2021? And I'll begin with
you asked the state fire commissioner, is anything on his plate that he's worried about? It's rural fire trucks. Rural fire trucks do one thing: they save lives and they protect property. And the good thing, the other side of it that people don't talk about, they keep insurance rates low. So if you live in Rankin County or Hinds County, wherever you live in the state, and you're way out, you may be a Class 10. But if you're in a city, you may be a Class 5. So let's just say that it's $1 in a Class 5 in a city. You move out into the county, you become an 8. Rates double. It's $2. And if you move into a Class 10 where there's no rural fire truck program or volunteers, it goes up again to $4. It's like geometric progression. Rates go up. Rural fire trucks save lives and they protect property. It's important that we keep them funded. The other issue there is that you've got 13,000 plus volunteers in this state, and if we don't take care of them or provide them some benefits, you know, these are guys that risk their life to save somebody's life, then they don't know who they are. They go down on a truck, they're first responders. We need to be more cognizant of what they need to keep volunteers in the system.
Yes. First responders are very important. They're on the front line of our communities across the country. So, Commissioner Gibson, that's the same question to you as well. Are there any potential legislative priorities that your office will focus on in 2021?
Well, thank you. But this past year, we had a pretty significant legislative agenda, and most of that got passed, and we are implementing that, executing that as the legislature asked us to do. We are, for example, of course, operating a coronavirus relief fund program right now for farmers who have uncovered costs, and the deadline to apply for that is November the 16th. So any farmers out there with uncovered costs and expenses from COVID, you can apply online at mscaresact.com. That's a website we created just for you as per the legislature. The legislature also entrusted us to operate and manage the state fairgrounds, which when everything shut down, that included the fairgrounds. And so we've been able to continue that great work there. We're going to keep the fairgrounds open. Nobody's lost a job there due to COVID, and we're going to keep operating as we will do that into the future. And you know, in addition to that, we are launching a brand new program to combat one of the greatest threats to Mississippi agriculture, and that is wild hogs. We've killed a bunch of hogs already with our test program the legislature authorized, and we're deploying traps all across the state to combat this invasive species. But as far as the future legislature, I would say I fully support Commissioner Cheney's concept on a permanent funding solution for rural fire trucks. As a volunteer fireman in prior years, I supported 100%, and I appreciate the positive impact our volunteer fire departments have in our communities, and certainly on the insurance aspect as well.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Well, as we conclude today, one final question. I'll give you both this opportunity. If you could speak directly to all Mississippians across the state, what message would you like to share with them?
What I would say to the people of Mississippi is these are unprecedented times. We've gone through some difficult days, but there are brighter days ahead. And I'm looking forward to see what next year is going to bring. You know, we're coming back from a very deep recession. The latest reports are very positive in that respect. So looking forward to the future, keeping Mississippi agriculture strong, food on the table, and a bright future for all of Mississippi.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well, again, we want to thank you both for being here with us today and having this conversation with me and MEC as well as all Mississippians. As we move along, Secretary of State Michael Watson was scheduled to be here today but had to return home to Pascagoula to be with family as a result of Hurricane Zeta. We hope he and his family are safe, as well as our friends on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Here's a special video message from Secretary Michael Watson, followed by a message from Attorney General Lynn Fitch. Thank you again.
Mississippi agriculture today is facing, of course, the uncertainty of COVID-19, the markets that shut down so many places all over our country and the world in this past year, and the price depression that experienced from that. But I think as our farmers have never quit, they continue to work, they continue to plant, to sow the seed for tomorrow's harvest. And the prices are continuing to rebound as the economy is opening back up. But I think it's just a simple matter of uncertainty and what the demand will be next year. But we're going to get through this, and we're going to be better for it.
How has COVID impacted agriculture in Mississippi?
Well, initially there was a tremendous, the bottom fell out of the prices on basically every commodity. When all the restaurants shut down, people changed how they're eating. They're not eating at restaurants. I'll give you one example, catfish. 70% of the market for catfish went away in one day. during the COVID shutdowns. So as the country has begun to reopen, as we know, here in Mississippi, we're reopening quickly, and other states are not, though. So it's a slow recovery, but we're going to see the economy open back up, people get back to their patterns, and at the end of the day, we all have to eat. So the food is here. We're very blessed by our farmers to have abundant supply of food no matter what tomorrow holds.
Tell us about Genuine Mississippi.
The Genuine Mississippi program is a program to support our local products, everything grown, raised, crafted, and made right here in Mississippi. We're promoting that. I'm wearing this brand on my lapel right here, promoting it not only here locally for our local economy, local markets, but we're promoting it around the world. And we're proud of our products and encourage people to join to be a part of it.
We're okay on our insurance side for most of the issues that face COVID. We've had to do some work on the front end back in March of 2020 to tell insurance companies, look, you got to comply to our bulletins, especially as it relates to telemedicine, and for having consumers not have to pay for COVID-19 testing. So we've been fairly good on the COVID side. The legislative session that begins in January, we'll have several things on our plate, but we'll probably only have at least 2 bills. One of them deals with the non-admitted policy fees, and the other one will deal with funding for the rural fire trucks. That's crucial for this state. If we don't fund rural fire trucks, insurance rates will go up. And it's a very, very precarious balance that I have to work trying to keep those funded and rates down. So we're working with some very good legislative leaders. Hopefully we'll get that handled.
Hello, everyone. I'm caught up with Speaker Philip Gunn here at the ballpark. And Speaker, thank you for taking time to talk to us today. I will tell the quick story. One of the first times I came to see you when you were had been elected Speaker, you met me at the door holding a baseball bat.
Oh, okay. I don't remember that. Well,
so I knew then you were going to keep me straight regardless. But I know you spent a lot of time at the ballpark with your sons and all that, and we're very, very happy to have you here.
We love baseball. I got 3 boys who played, and I think the last time I was out here, they asked me to throw out the first pitch, and I bounced it on the plate and got booed. So the crowd's rough out here if you don't perform.
I get that, but I tell you what, speaking of performing, you've been serving District 56 for quite a while. You're starting your 3rd term as Speaker of the House, and there's been literally a lot of great things that you've done working with MEC and the business community. But I think this year's session was probably the most unusual we'll ever experience. Talk a little bit about the work of the House during this very unusual year.
Well, I was very proud of my House members this year. I commended them on the day we left and told them, you know, we handled some things that no one has ever handled before in the history of Mississippi politics. I don't think we've ever seen a session like the one we had this year. There's no playbook for it. There's no recipe for it. We just had to deal with the things that were dumped in our lap. I am proud of the fact that we were able to handle the pandemic from a financial standpoint. I think the decisions we made over the last 8 years prior to the pandemic were very conservative and very good, and so our state was in a great place financially when it hit. That helped us absorb some of the economic blow. And it is giving us a good opportunity to have the best recovery we possibly can. Obviously, we had to deal with the pandemic and all the things that brought. I felt like my House members did a great job of making decisions, as I say, when there was no playbook for how to handle them. And, of course, we had some other issues that we dealt with. It was a long session, extended session. I don't think we were going to get a break. Normally, you end around April the 1st, and you have a few months to recover. And we've just now got to roll right back in. You've been around long enough, you know that this is the time of the year when you start gearing up for the next session. So we've just rolled right into getting ready for 21.
And as far as COVID-19, the impact it had, I know there was a lot of legislation that really focused on helping businesses and citizens across the state. Why was that so important to give them that?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. That was one of the highlights of the session, I felt like. There was a lot of concern over actually the uncertainty of COVID and what does this mean for our businesses? What does it mean for those who are transacting business? There was great concern. MEC was active in this concern about liability. And what do we do? How do we protect our small businesses from being sued by frivolous lawsuits, people who are claiming that they got COVID at my store, at my place of business? And I think it was one of the highlights of the session that we passed that liability bill. It is now being hailed as one of the top bills in the country, and other states are using it as a model. So that was one of the strong things we did for business this year, was to give them that liability protection, that liability comfort, if you will, knowing that they can continue to transact business, not having to worry about a frivolous lawsuit over COVID.
And we want to thank you for your work on that, because that was extremely important. But there was also another issue that's been a long time issue of MEC, and that's the changing of the state flag. It's been something you've been outspoken on. Your leadership on this was so vital. Talk a little bit about that process and what it meant.
Well, and you're right, MEC has been a leader. I know y'all had your own flag once upon a time, so I know y'all have been passionate about this issue. I think this is an opportunity for us as a state to come together and say who we are. As you know, this flag has "In God We Trust" on it. I think that defines who we are as Mississippians. We are the most religious state in the country, and everybody here, I think, will rally behind that. And it's a great opportunity for us to define who we are as a state.
Yeah, a lot of symbolism went into that. I think the commission worked really hard to get that done. The votes on November 3rd, and again, you've kind of touched on it, but again, what do you tell folks when they're thinking about this? Why is it so important to go vote on this flag?
Well, it's just a new opportunity, as I said, to define who we are. We are a state who believes in God, and on the whole, we think that is very important. That is just who we are, and this flag reflects that. And I would encourage everybody to get out and go vote for it on November the 3rd.
You mentioned this a few minutes ago. The session ended earlier this month. We've got about 2 months before you're back in session. We typically have a lot bigger break, and what people don't understand, like yourself, you still have a job outside of the legislature that you have to do, so it's been unusual. But heading into 2021, what do you see as some of the key issues that we'll be focused on as we move forward?
Well, the pandemic, of course, is still with us, and so we will continue to deal with issues that arise out of the pandemic. One of the great things we did this last session that I'm very proud of is the way we spent the coronavirus money, the relief money, one of which was to establish a small business plan, what we call it, Restart Mississippi, I think is what it was called. We put over $300 million, or right at $300 million into a fund that is to be used to help our small businesses. Those dollars are going out. We continue to monitor how those are spent. We put money in corrections and in hospitals and in distance learning and a variety of other areas. These are the monies that came down from the federal government. So we wanted to make sure that we spent those dollars in the way that best helped Mississippians. So we're going to continue to search for ways as 21 comes forward. We're going to continue to watch the pandemic, make sure that we do the things that help our citizens, and make sure we remain fiscally conservative. As I said, one of the great things that helped us through this was that we were in great financial shape before the pandemic hit. One of the things we got to do is continue to be conservative with that. We had an infusion of about $6 billion from the federal government, which is not going to be there next year. So we still don't know how the pandemic's going to affect us. We still have to be conservative in our budgeting.
And one other area I know that you spent a lot of time on in the past, and it's very important, is workforce development. There were some major changes this year. I think we have the opportunity to set up the Office of Workforce Development, which will be huge. Talk a little bit about why workforce development is so important for us as we move forward.
Well, it dovetails right into the prosperity of our state. Our people need jobs. We focus on education. We focus on training. But at the end of the day, people have to have a job to go to when that training, when that education is over. And as you know, you've worked with me on this. We've been very focused on workforce development in the House of Representatives. I had a summit a year or two ago where the whole focus was how do we train and educate our people to go into a career technical field. We also did a summit on brain drain. How do we retain our best and our brightest and attract other people to the state of Mississippi? So it's been a huge focus for us in the House of Representatives.
And I think that's so important because they go hand in hand. Getting people
Correct.
trained, getting businesses here, and knowing that is so important. Anything you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Well, I thank you for arranging us the opportunity to do this today. Appreciate the opportunity we have to come and reflect upon last session and look forward to the next session. So we look forward to working with you and MEC on things that are coming forward.
Well, we greatly appreciate you being part of Hobnob 2020, and we wish you the best and look forward to working with you come January.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it.